This podcast is going to be quite sensitive to some individuals out there because it's a podcast about the defragmented role of parent-child relationships. Now, you might be wondering, what do I mean by defragmented? Well, I will explain that in a little while. You know, a majority of us, when we are born in this world, we don't really know who our parents are going to be. Only later on, toddler stage, teenage stage, adulthood stage, do we really discover who our parents and our family units are. Many of us are blessed to have really good, steady homes where we have either one parent or two parents, sometimes three parents, sometimes the community of grandparents, aunties, uncles, that are all there, that is providing us with, love, care, a family unit, in the sense that they are helping you in your milestones as you are growing older and facing adulthood. And unfortunately, there's the other side, which is what I'm going to be focusing on. There's the side of a lot of people out there that unfortunately come from what is labelled as broken homes, whether that's through divorce, whether that is through the parent dying, whether it's because, you might have been placed in foster care, adopted, you might have lost parents in war, because that's becoming more and more, a frequent thing as you look in the news now in 2020. And some of us, unfortunately, have those types of relationships with our parents also because of other things that happen in life. So, for example, some of us, unfortunately, may be a victim of being dependent on drugs, alcohol, other various addictions that we might have. It could be that our parent actually is the one that's displaying those things. You could be in a situation where, because of your preference of sexuality or who you are attracted to, also causes, the brokenness, I guess, within that family unit, because families will not accept that particular part of you, which is you and who you are. There are other aspects as well. It could be that there may be clear stipulations from one or two parents about the fact that you're not, following the religious faith, you're not following what has been set out to you in that particular faith that your family and your community follow. You personally might perceive it as that you are following it, they perceive it that you're not. And it can cause quite a lot of friction, and it can cause quite a lot of disharmony, obviously, in those family dynamics. And, I myself have witnessed quite a lot of these particular things that I'm talking about in my lifetime. You see your own situation with your own family where it's not necessarily the way you wish it was, okay? So you have family dynamics where maybe things have broken down, things have de-escalated or, escalated to a point where there is tension, there is friction between you and another adult that is your parent. And sometimes things are not a bit like Disney films make out, where it's all harmony and, people are accepting and are kind. Unfortunately, life is not like a Disney film, sad to say. However, there are some positives that can come out of this as well. Now, if I reflect on growing up for me in the early 1980s and 1990s, you didn't see many parents or many children, should I say, from what people label as broken homes. Quite a lot of the times you had parents that were married for a long time. That was part of the culture, that was part of the tradition and the expectation. And I guess over the years, and as I've gone into education and other careers as well, I witnessed more and more families sort of becoming a slightly different unit. So obviously as the world changed, as cultures change, as traditions change, you're seeing more and more families having siblings with other families, and not necessarily the father being around or the mother being around. And obviously this causes issues, doesn't it, sometimes? And what I have to say is, a majority of the time, and it's very rare to see the guy, but a majority of the time, it's the female that's left with the children, bringing them up, doing both, the parent role from the man's point of view, from the female's point of view. And it's a very, very challenging situation that they are in, whether they choose to be a housewife, whether they are out working, hustling. In some cases, I've known family situations where the mother has worked 3-4 jobs purely just to put school uniform on those children's backs, to get them through school, college, university, you name it, they have sacrificed. They have really sacrificed. And if anything, the children that have come out of that predicament, that I am aware of anyway, have come out stronger, more focused, more challenged, and more driven in a respect. My experience of some families later on that have come from broken families in the sense of divorce, they have really struggled, from being torn between one parent and the other, from having to go from one house perhaps to the other house, from having to try and adapt to a new parent that is now trying to be their mother or their father, and so on. That also has its own issues as well, because obviously you have different dynamics between the other siblings and the extended family between those. Sometimes it can be quite harmonious as well, but obviously it depends on the situation and it depends on the whole dynamics. I can recall one particular friend discovering that he had a brother and a sister from his father, and not knowing at all that this other family lived down the street from them. And they were not aware at all that dad had this secret life. And whilst he was away, he was a coach driver, and whilst he was away working, the reality was he had this secret family that lived down the street from them. And I'm sure we can all relate to things like that. We all know stories like that, where, for a long time it causes the breakup in a marriage because the other person has obviously not been faithful, and you find out all these different family dynamics. Through my teaching career, I came across quite a lot of students, in fact, that had been in and out of the foster care. And in fact, one of the things I did later on in my career was become an independent visitor, which is working with children that are in the care system. I'm talking about in the UK, where unfortunately the parents are unable to cope, and we have a system called social services where we do try very hard to give some rehabilitation to help those children that may be not getting a meal, that may not be clean, that might not be looked after. We also help those and families to re-educate themselves about what is important, especially when it comes to finance. Quite a lot of the time, unfortunately, those parents are on drugs, on drink. They are unable to budget with the benefits they're receiving. Some of them have big health issues. Some of them have huge illiteracy issues. It goes on. And quite a lot of the schools tried very hard, before that child was removed and taken into care. Obviously in extreme cases, like I said, where you've got drugs or other forms of abuse, they are taken into care. But then sadly, those children are placed in foster care, and the majority of the time, the child is coming to school with a suitcase or a backpack full of clothes, not knowing every day where they're going to go. It all depended on the system. And, that itself can really break somebody, can't it? We've all seen the film Annie, where she's in the home, in the orphan home. We've all seen Oliver Twist, or read Oliver Twist. But life is very different from those particular films and those particular texts that I'm talking about. Then you have other aspects, where unfortunately sometimes situations happen, life happens where either the adult or the child is codependent on certain substances. Now in 2020, those illicit substances, depending on where you are, depending on different countries, some will be banned, some will be Class A drugs, some will be Class B, some will be Class C. Some, obviously even now in the market, there's so many things that are coming out that you can't even keep up to date, It's almost like a manufacturing production line with what the new things that are coming out. And I've known people in my life, whether it's through education or through personal life, who have unfortunately got themselves in a situation where they have caught themselves in a rock and a hard place, as we say, and sadly they can't get themselves out of that addiction. Some people have used the sort of like mentality of going out on a night, using drugs as a recreational thing and then ended up with a serious addiction. And I'm not saying it's just individuals, it can be parents as well. And again, it breaks families down. I've come across situations where, people are stealing from the family, selling jewelry, selling items in their house to basically feed their addiction. They've got to the point where, they are extremely violent or abusive towards their parents or grandparents, and vice versa. It's not just one way. And unfortunately, the financial aspect of that, or the family burden of that, they can't cope. They've tried, they've really tried to help that person rehabilitate themselves. And unfortunately, it's extremely hard. It puts a lot of pressure on the family dynamics. And in some cases, if it's the child or the parent, they've just cut ties. They've cut ties because they just think sometimes that the best solution, the best thing to do is to walk away or step away. And in other case scenarios, the parent has tried really hard to get that person the help that they need. But obviously, like I said to you, it's not an easy predicament to be in, There are other scenarios, there are other situations where, due to the preference of that individual's dynamics in regards to a partner, whether it's someone from a different culture, someone from a different tradition, different faith, different gender, or the same gender, that has also caused, obviously, huge disharmony in family dynamics as well. And I appreciate it's 2020, and I appreciate that in some places and in some cultures and in some traditions, some people are more liberal thinking. They're able to not necessarily accept, but they respect. And then you have the extreme case where they don't accept or respect. They find it, completely bizarre. They can't understand. And they can't get past their own prejudice, I guess, and their own conceptions of what a partnership should look like. And unfortunately, in those predicaments, family dynamics break down as well. I've had a lot of people in my past, struggle with this whole gender idea. And it does cause situations in families, unfortunately, where the family dynamics does break down. Then you have other aspects of culture and tradition as well, like I've said, where, you might be brought up in a very strict religious faith. And the way that you carry out those traditions, the way you carry out that faith, and you follow those traditions is following the book, so to speak. But in the eyes of a parent, you're not, okay? And it's very easy to separate you from those particular aspects of your family and the family dynamics because you're not adhering to the pressure, to the bullying, I guess, and the constant demands that are being made, instead of your parent embracing the fact that you are following that faith and opening their eyes to see that you are, doing what you should be doing. But unfortunately, sometimes people can, not always, sometimes they can use religion and faith to bash people over the head with, because they're more concerned about the judgment and they're more concerned about what people will think, not necessarily about the fact that you are following the tradition and you are following the culture as well. So there are those aspects as well. More and more now in 2020, as we sadly witness quite a lot of wars that are happening in the world. We've seen quite a lot of wars going on from World War I, World War II, and then we're experiencing wars in, places like Bosnia, Serbia, Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, so many places, the list can go on and on and on. And unfortunately, a lot of individuals are left without a parent, without a child. And a lot of them are placed in adoption centres, if they're fortunate enough to be found, that is. Sometimes some people are very, very caring and have taken them and embraced them as part of their family and brought them into their homes. But that is not necessarily everybody's predicament, everybody's situation. And obviously each person's situation is going to be different from mine and yours. And it's a sad part of reality, isn't it? There are other aspects as well that come out of this, is that depending on each of the, predicaments I've just gone through with you, each of the scenarios I've gone through with you, some of us are fortunate enough, are lucky enough to have very good friends around us. If we are blessed, that is, we are very, very fortunate that sometimes your friends' parents, in fact, take you on as part of the family. Now, that has happened to me. It's happened to other people that I'm aware of as well. And, sometimes those particular relationships stay with you for a long time, if you're lucky and you work at it. And sometimes you're left sort of like gobsmacked about how that scenario can happen, and why that particular family embraces you more than your own biological family, and that's quite interesting dynamics to look at, isn't it? There is a really famous TV show that was an American show with Will Smith, and it's called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Some of you may or may not be aware of it, but I recall a really crucial key scene where, he's raised by his mother and he's sent to basically live with his aunt and his uncle. And there's a scene where his actual biological father comes back in his life. And sadly, the father abandons him again and disowns him again. And it breaks his heart. And there's a key scene with him and Uncle Phil, which many of you I'm sure are aware of, where right at the very end, Will Smith in his character gets extremely angry and gets extremely upset and, says, why doesn't he want me? Why is he rejecting me? Why does he not love me? And, the uncle can't answer him. Nobody can answer him. And it's a scene that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And it's a scene that I'm sure a lot of people can understand, and it does hurt you and it does touch your heartstrings. And one of the good things that comes out of being adopted or being with someone, I guess, that is acting like a surrogate parent is that they do love you unconditionally. They do support you unconditionally. However, you still have that part of your heart and part of your soul. And I'm personally speaking from experience, you might differ. There is wondering why. Why does my parent not accept me for who I am? Why does my parent put stipulations on me about the way I need to be in order for me to be accepted by them? Why does my parent not love me for who I am? And these are key, crucial questions which I'm sure all of you can relate to in one way or another. Sometimes we start trying to repair bridges with our broken family relationships as well. We try really hard in our adult life, in our teenage life. Sometimes we think that if the dust settles that, things can be more harmonious. For example, some people, they end up having children in their families, and they try to rebuild the connection with the grandparents. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And then you get other aspects as well where you just realise that, you just have to wish that adult in your life peace and harmony. And even though they are not willing to let go of their grudges and their judgmentality and their hardened hearts, I guess, you have to just be okay with that. And trust me when I say that is extremely difficult. That's not an easy relationship to be able to accept. It's not a easy thing to soften your heart, because you still feel rejected. You still feel like there's a part of you that's broken, there's a part of you that's missing, and you get to a stage where you just channel on and you soldier on, and you realize that actually their driving force, their silence or their rejection, their resilience to not accept you, not to even acknowledge you, as hurtful as that is and as painful as it is, sometimes drives you to steer into your life and do other things that perhaps you didn't imagine that you were going to do. And you go on, like I said, to have a brilliant life with yourself before any other person is involved. And like I said to you, there's no magical wand. There's no happy ever after. This is not a Disney film where there is, a situation where that occurs. Each of us, I guess, have to accept our family dynamics for what they are. And we have to strive forward, and we have to love self first, and we have to love the people around us that do accept us for who we are. Sometimes that happens in the least person you expect. Like I said to you, sometimes you have family, friends from a distance, I guess, that end up being family to you that you just didn't realise. You know, you might not call them the family in title, but they definitely are. They take the role of a grandparent, a brother, a sister, an uncle, an aunt. And sometimes, you know, that love and that compassion from them is far more rewarding actually than the love of a biological parent. And I guess that's what I want to conclude with, that there's a lot of us out there that are very, very fortunate and very blessed to have that situation. Wherever you are in your particular journey with your particular parents, you know, I wish you the best. I wish you peace. I wish you love, and I wish you joy. And I hope that if there is a part of you that is broken, there is a part of you that does need healing, you start recognizing that healing starts within. Okay? Love starts within. Start with that first before you start wanting acceptance from others. Take care. God bless.